Oh, there's no doubt about it. This one is going to be hard. We got to talk about Buffy Sainte-Marie. Bonjour, Mishko Paganan Queen Adishnakas Mangdodem. Hi, everybody. My name is Sandy Boucher. I'm Red Thunderbolt Woman of the Loon Clan, a proud member of Seine River First Nation and Treaty 3 territory, and I have a status card that proves that, and relationships and family and documentation that proves that. Because identity is the topic of discussion today. And you know what? It's kind of funny because as the time for doing these podcasts approaches, I often, I start thinking about what I'm going to talk about. And I had written down a little note to myself that I wanted to talk about the fact that we are not who other people say we are. And that's huge for a marginalized person. To be Indigenous in Canada, you hear that you're less than, that somehow you're uncivilized, that you're dirty if your skin is of a darker shade. Um, you're a drain on the public coffers, that you should be ashamed to be who you are. And that's what I wanted to focus on. And then the news about Buffy Sainte-Marie, the Fifth Estate program on Buffy Sainte-Marie, the news hit the fan. And I didn't really know what was going on at first. I had an incredibly busy week. And the first thing I saw was a quote by a friend of mine, someone that I very much respect, someone very knowledgeable in his culture and his traditions. He's Indigenous, but of a totally different nation than mine. So, and that's going to play into this Buffy thing. And he had shared, I don't even remember what his comment was about Buffy Sainte-Marie. And I read the article he was referencing, and there was a line about the Pyopot claiming her as one of their own. And as Indigenous people, we have long said that the Canadian government doesn't get to decide who's Indigenous. We know who are Indigenous. We know who belongs to our communities, whether they're status or not. That's whatever. We know who our own are. Which is why when it comes to pretendians, a huge part of that question is who claims you? What community recognizes you as one of their own? So I saw the quote, and I quoted that one part, right? That I know who I am and I know who claims me. And at that time, I thought Buffy was under attack. I thought white people were attacking. And funny how circle the wagons is one of those phrases I pointed out is so derogatory to Indigenous people because it implies we're attacking. We're not the ones that are attacking all the time, but I digress. I mean, who was going to question Buffy, right? And then I saw more comments and more quotes and started realizing there was a whole bunch to this story. And so I decided to do something that, in my humble opinion, not enough people do. I went and watched the Fifth Estate documentary, the episode on Buffy. I got the information, I got the facts rather than just a little headline or a blurb and making an assumption. I actually trusted my brain. And it was heartbreaking. And I guess that's one of the main reasons I wanted to do this podcast is I need to ask a favor of non-Indigenous people. Don't start running to Indigenous people today asking them what they think. That would be the equivalent of running and asking them what they thought of an accident in which a loved one died. Because I have no doubt in my mind A whole bunch of us are doing a lot of unpacking today because now I've said the older I get, the fairer I get. I don't know what's happening. I'm fading. But I can show you the pictures of me as a child with my darker skin. And I remember, I'm 59 years old. I was born in 1964. I remember Buffy on Sesame Street. I remember loving that she was on Sesame Street, that Indigenous was on Sesame Street, and she wasn't ashamed of who she was. And that made me feel so good in a world that treated my dad, my French dad, so much better than my Indigenous Anishinaabe mom. And by the way, no, I'm not Métis. Another thing, like, don't make assumptions. But I watched the documentary, and as highlighted in that documentary, there are too many inconsistencies. The story never always changes. And if you're Indigenous, your story doesn't change, even if you're 60s scoop. And by the way, claiming you're 60s scoop and you're not, those people were traumatized and separated from the people who still claim them, by the way. It's sickening. It is absolutely sickening. So I went from feeling so bad for Buffy that she's what now 80 and that this is how her life was going to end with this doubt to watching the documentary and thinking, how freaking dare you? Anyone who thinks it's cool to be Indigenous, to pretend to be Indigenous, has no idea the price we pay to be Indigenous. It just makes me sick. And it's so confusing because I remember watching her and I have her songs on my playlist now. She was one of those first strong Indigenous women that I wanted to be. Well, guess what, Buffy? I am. And I got the documentation to prove it. So kiss my Royal Canadian butt. For so many people, Indigenous people, this is going to rock them to the core. So, again, our allies, space. Your opinion of what you think about this does not need to be shared, does not need to be said. Give us the space because this one's going to take some time. Am I upset that she got discovered? No. Pretendians need to be called out. Anyone out there pretending to be Indigenous, I have this much respect for you, and I will call you out every chance I get. And we're in a room together. You can bet if I think for a half second that someone's going to mistakenly think you're Indigenous, you can make sure I'm going to clarify that. That is my promise. But until then, we need some space. Thank you for listening. I love you. Bye bye.